This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored in part by Allison Cook and Super Inframan. Help us out by becoming a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have with me Super Inframan.
Hello, everybody.
It's been a few months.
Yeah, I've been on the road a little bit more, but the fun part is I get to listen to the show and enjoy it and then message everybody later and ask them questions. So that's a lot of fun, too.
And we have Red Pill Junkie.
Buenas noches.
It's not been as long for you. Usually you're the one I'm saying, oh man, it's been so long.
Yeah, I guess it's been like a month or so, since my last appearance, I want to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to start with this. This is kind of a Wandering the Road episode. We're just going to see where it goes. But on Radio Mysterioso, there was a post here. I don't know if you saw it, Red Pill, about the hypnosis thing.
On their Facebook page?
The Facebook page. I think Stephanie Quick posted it. So it says, hypnosis was crucial to solving the 1975 Chowchilla bus kidnapping case, where a school bus full of children was hijacked and buried in Livermore, California, which is just crazy when you think about it. They buried a school bus. The bus driver, Frank Edward Ed Ray, managed to free the children from captivity. The kidnappers were caught because Ray underwent hypnosis and recalled all but one digit of the license plate of the number of the vehicle used by the kidnappers. This was a huge, sensational, nationwide story at the time and showed hypnosis in the most favorable light. Of course, in wide practice, results are much more mixed, including harmful outcomes. But what it makes me wonder, so yes, obviously in this case, this guy was able to remember something that he couldn't remember consciously, and it was accurate. And what it makes me think of is the remote viewing experiments, where when they're given the information later, their accuracy is way higher than if they're not.
Right, closing the loop, they call it.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if because he got because he found it later and he was shown the stuff later, that in that hypnotic state he was better able to recall the plate.
Kind of
That's
like a
interesting.
salad, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and you could compare that to, how much we're all skeptical of hypnosis for, like, recalling abduction experiences, where there's no way for us to go back and show those people, what happened as a result of that experience that they had. So that makes a lot of sense. And then, it also occurred to me, like, what kind of state he went into when he was being hypnotized, if that was almost like remote viewing the car to see the license plate.
Right. I mean, we don't know what hypnosis is. I mean, that's one of the few things that people don't seem to mention, relate about it, is we really don't understand what's going on with hypnosis. We also don't understand what's going on with, what is it? The sedative they give you when they put you under, anesthesia.
Oh, anesthesia. That stuff is weird.
Like, we don't know we don't know why that works.
Yeah. And, they don't talk about it as much, but anesthesia takes quite a while to process out of your body over time.
Oh, really?
And it can mess with your mental faculties. It tends to be much older people, but especially the week or two after a major surgery, people won't recognize their immediate family. Kind of dementia-like symptoms almost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. I've seen it once with a family member, and I was like, oh gosh, and then it turned out to be just anesthesia related, and they were fine as time went on.
Yeah. Huh.
But yes, it's always a good thing to know how you react to anesthesia when you're younger, so you know that what would happen if you're older, and if you need to have people around you prepared for you to not be familiar with them.
Right. Right.
Yeah. My relative did not recognize her children and was like going to call the cops on them because she's like, I don't know who these people are in my house, and I'm hurt.
Oh, wow.
My God.
Yeah. That stuff happens.
So yeah, I mean, with that, with hypnosis, we don't know what it is. We know it can affect. You can very effectively change people's behavior with hypnosis. It is good for some therapy. It's just not generally good for memory recall, especially if the person is, biased toward, there's a satanic cult or UFOs or whatever, and then you get all these stories that the unconscious or whatever state we're in with hypnosis is creating. I do really like the one thing you mentioned, Red Pill, at one point, where you said, well, maybe some of these experiences are happening in real time while they're in that altered state, in that hypnosis. Like as far as the paranormal experiences.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, some sort of like a channeling state or something.
That makes a lot of sense. And, that would kind of speak to also people that have experimented with DMT and had some interesting experiences, or ayahuasca or something like that, because those are real-time experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
I never thought of that. I like that.
And I mean, obviously it can be guided, and especially if, whether it's intentional or not, it's very easy because you're in a very highly suggestive state.
Right.
So you got people who are not professionally trained doing hypnosis on people who think they've been abducted by UFOs, and then you just have a mess.
Yeah, this is something that we was discussing on Twitter recently with some people who are very much against the use of hypnosis among abduction researchers, and I can understand perfectly their reserves. Although I'm still not that willing to, label hypnosis as totally useless with regards to, studying the UFO phenomenon. Right. I mean, because like you said, we still don't know what hypnosis is. We still don't know how it works, how it might work differently on different people, depending on how susceptible they are to be hypnotized. But I almost feel like this is the same panic, or the same kind of like demonization of psychedelic drugs, that happened in the 1960s and the 1970s, that completely shut down what was a very promising avenue of psychopharmacology.
That's true.
The thing that only got restarted back in the late 80s and early 90s. Thanks to the work and persistence of Dr. Rick Strassman, with the famous DMT trials. But yeah, I mean,
the stuff he had to go through to get permission to research DMT was absurd.
Yeah, I'm just going through those pages because DMT, the Spirit Molocule, is the kind of book that everybody knows about, and I suspect only a few people have bothered to read. And I was one of those few people, I say, okay, yeah, I have the book. It's in my bookshelves, and I've been there like in the last 10 years. I never opened it. So I said, okay, I guess it's time to open it. And yeah, you're right. All the red tape that he had to go through just to not only to get permission, to actually get someone willing to produce DMT pure enough, so it could be used for human trials. It was almost hilarious, it was almost like something out of a Terry Gilliam film.
Yes.
Oh my goodness!
I'm pretty sure I talked to him about that when I had him on, because I did 2 parts with him. I did because he has a book out after that as well. So I did one show with him on each book.
Yeah, but then you see my point that and obviously, I mean, we're talking about ufology. Obviously, it's not as stringent as psychology, psychopharmacology. But having these people say, no, hypnosis is completely verboten in the study of UFOs. Being that black and white kind of scares me.
Okay, I can see that. I don't think it should be used to recover memories, but I don't think it should be I think we need to understand more about it and how it works before we can do that, because it could create false memories, and those false memories often are stronger than the real memories. So it's like, well, that's not necessarily good.
Yeah. I think maybe if everybody understood going into it that, like, say you guys are taking me through recovering a memory, like, all right, we're just going to use this as a tool, and maybe it's a jumping off point with what you come up with, and maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to evaluate it solely based on what you come back with, but not think of it as like, this is an actual experience that you had.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, even if it's not a real experience, going under hypnosis might help you deal with whatever that real experience was that you're having problems processing.
Right.
Go ahead, Seriah.
Oh, I was going to say Mike Cleland had done some. I don't remember. I don't know if it was for his UFO stuff. I think he did a past life regression, and I remember him saying that, like, it didn't matter if it was real or not because it helped him.
Yeah.
Well,
and how much does that sound like folks who have done ayahuasca?
Yes.
And taken care of, and much better have been able to handle any type of like mental health challenges they've had because it took them through a particular experience. That makes a lot of sense.
What was I going to say about hypnosis, though? I think it would be interesting there has to be ways to study this better. There was something else I was going to say about it, and I've completely lost it now. DMT completely lost my thread.
So if you're going to study it, would you take the approach of let's make this a relaxed, comfortable situation as opposed to like, I'm sure now when
definitely
has been looked at as very clinical, kind of like going to a sleep center where you're not going to sleep well because you're not at home.
Yes. I know what I was going to say, though. Because it can be used for past life regressions, I mean, obviously some people come up with utterly ridiculous past lives. Where they're all famous people and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, how many people have been Cleopatra? How many people have been Napoleon? But then you have the people who don't come up with someone famous. They come up with some random name out of history. And then when they do research, they find, oh, that person really existed. So are they really recalling a past life? Or is it some kind of time loop where they find that information later and they're all excited about it, and then they're able to pick that up in the past in a hypnotic state?
I could see time loop. I could see that just being something like you're pulling it out of the universal unconscious that is not dictated by time.
I was thinking about that when with all those people that, like you said, who think they were someone very famous on a previous life, and you say, okay, how many Napoleons are there? But then again, how about like you said, someone is able to tap into the Napoleon consciousness, and that's why they feel they're Napoleon, not because they were, but because they are able to tap into that, fountain of information.
Yep.
So you're tuning into a certain channel. That doesn't mean that you were part of that channel on a previous life, but you are getting that information nevertheless. And that's it's one of those, I guess, unfalsifiable ideas about reincarnation. Okay, we know that some people actually manage to get information that is accurate about previous lives, but then is that incontrovertible proof that those people actually experienced those events in the past, or is it just showing that the mind is able to tap into information in a non-local matter that is unconstrained by time and space?
Or are we just all connected?
Yeah, exactly.
So we've all been Napoleon.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. We're all Napoleon, and we're all being Josephine, and we're all being, I don't know, all the way back to the Big Bang. And actually, that's one of the things that this guy I got obsessed with, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, this crazy Mexican guy who was experimenting and experimentally, studying consciousness. He came up with that idea. Okay, so obviously everybody could get synchronized in a psychic way with another person, regardless if they are, related by blood or anything, because we are all, come from the same origin, which is the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm. Or some kind of overt conscious. I'm not sure I'm convinced of the Big Bang, so we could just say some oversoul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. Like, it makes me think of people that think that they have found a soulmate or something like that, because they're so in tune with each other, and have they just happened to hit upon that circuit that allows them to kind of think together and think around each other and what have you.
So one of the things you find with kids when they spontaneously remember past lives is a lot of times they've had past lives with that same family.
Yeah.
Which is also something that Jane Roberts Seth said, that souls tend to reincarnate together repeatedly as like almost like spiritual families. Like, it's not always like mother, son. It might be, a different relation, even, husband, wife, or whatever, or mother, child. But, and that seems to be what kids are remembering when they have those spontaneous memories. It's like, oh, we were in a plane that caught on fire and we all died, and it's like, what?
Yeah. It's always fun. So I was actually reading up on some of the kids that have said these things, like maybe yesterday or the day before. But yeah, it'll be like, mommy, before, I adopted you and raised you before I came out this time, or, those kinds of things. Yeah. And I was your mommy, that kind of thing.
Yes.
That stuff it's amazing and it's creepy.
It's also consistent.
Because, little kids are walking around like saying things that you're like, there's no way he should know that. Yeah. There's no way you should say that.
Yeah.
And the accounts are very similar and consistent. They're not just crazy, wild, wildly different accounts. They all, yes, I mean the exact details, but that type of data is repeated in all these accounts.
Yeah. So two of them I came across yesterday were people talking about when they were very young, repeating mathematical equations.
Oh yeah.
Which I had not seen much of that, at least with children. And this one guy was going through some kind of quadratic equation that he would just repeat over and over to himself and out loud. And another one was doing, the Pythagorean theorem. And there's no way they would have learned it, probably wouldn't have seen it, much less known how to articulate a giant, algebraic equation out loud.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's also, if I'm not mistaken, there's also some kids who can just like play instruments like their masters the first time they touch them.
Wow. I would love to see that. That's so cool.
And then you have to ask how. How is that even a possibility unless it's a past memory? If you were consumed in your previous life with that equation, that type of mathematics, or that type of music in performances, it may be something you hold over onto another life.
Right.
One other little account I read was someone talking about their son spoke Polish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another one.
Yeah, and they're like, we're not Polish. We have no exposure to people from Poland or the Polish language.
And that's not like, especially in America, you don't hear Polish very often, like on television or anything like that.
Right. So that could be like a subconscious repetition or anything.
Yeah. Like if they said, oh, my kid suddenly spontaneously started speaking Spanish. Well, you hear enough Spanish on American television that you could say, well, maybe, but not Polish.
But not Polish. Exactly. Yeah. That was my thought about the Pythagorean theorem too, was like, the quadratic equation, that one was pretty complicated, but what if you were flipping channels in the background and Discovery was on and there was a scientist or something like that?
For something like that, I don't think it would be that simple.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because
I mean, even languages, you'd have to hear them for quite a while before they clicked, even if you were just emulating them.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You know, maybe if they were autistic.
Yeah, I can see that.
And we're able to just focus in on that one thing. Because I've known autistic people where you show them something once and they got it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's always a possibility. One of the shows I did in the first year of the show, I had Julia Assante on. And I didn't know that much about her. It's probably the most blind interview I had done up to that point. And someone had recommended her, so I asked her if she wanted to come on, but her book was like 800 pages long or something like that, and I'm like, I'm not reading that. Holy crap.
Yeah, that would take a year to get through. Oh, my gosh.
So I'm like, I'll just look up some stuff online, and so I saw some of the stuff she did, and she, you know, talked about the Seth material a little and stuff like that, but she was a little more new agey than I liked. But the interview was pretty interesting. One of the things she says, she did past life regressions on people. And she said the freakiest one she ever did was she was doing this past life on this woman, and this woman had all the same past lives she did. So she's like going through and it's like, oh, I was this person, and Julia's like, wait, but I was that person. And then she's doing the next one, and the next one's the same, and the next one's the same, and Julia's like, what is happening right now?
See, and that kind of sounds like when we were talking about picking up on some kind of
maybe
field out there, you know, because like, okay, you're a conduit for this and I'm next to you and you're kind of making me a conduit.
Yep.
Right. And so I'm downloading what you've downloaded.
Or,
you know,
they're the same person.
Or they're the same. That's a good point too.
I think she said it creeped her out and she stopped the session and never talked to the woman again.
I think that's a reasonable response.
But yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. Maybe she was just psychically picking it up from Julia.
But you know, this is one thing I'm interested to learn about more. I've only seen a handful of accounts, but people recalling lives in the future that they've lived.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
But that's usually again only through hypnosis. I don't think there's any spontaneousness to that.
That's a good point.
Again, that doesn't mean it can be completely dismissed. It's just there's no way to validate it.
Right. Exactly.
There's also that in-between state that they'll find with hypnosis. I'm not sure if that only comes up in hypnosis or not, but like sort of that waiting area, like in between lives. It is a common thing in hypnosis.
Very common, yeah.
So it's like, okay, so either that's just part of our, you know, collective unconscious there, or maybe there's something to it.
Yeah.
This sort of timeless place where you're waiting for your next incarnation.
Yeah.
You know, I have to think if that's real, as much as we talk about times not being very fun or difficult or something like that, that I always kind of think of it like a video game where you're like deciding which movie you're going to watch or which game you're going to play. You know, like, man, I'm going to go check out the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st. That looked pretty cool.
And maybe that's what it's like. I mean, there's also, oh man, I totally lost it again. There was a video game analogy. It's also possible that we pick the events that, you know, that we sort of plan out our lives to a degree.
Oh, yeah.
At least particular events, like I want to experience this, I want to deal with this difficulty, I want, you know, and when you're going through it now, you're thinking, why would I do that to myself? But it's how we experience growth.
Yeah, it's the life contract thing that is so popular in New Age.
Yes.
Then again, and I think it's an interesting idea, but sometimes I think, okay, yeah, but every contract should have some clause to forfeit it, right, or to back away from it. Otherwise, it's not a contract; it's a sentence. You know.
Well, the contract's with yourself, though. You know.
Yeah, but what if I, you know, get tired of, you know, of it? You know, how do I convince myself that I don't want to go with it anymore?
Well, maybe in another multiverse, you are going with it. I put that down to sort of that river analogy I use, where you know, life is like going down this river, and you can either go with the flow or you could kind of like, get off into the shallows. You don't really have the choice to go in completely different directions. It's just whether or not you go, how far you go down your own river.
Right. But then again, there's also some people who use that idea as an excuse not to help.
Oh, sure.
People. But then, so that's part of their karma, or that's part of their life contract. That's something they need to sort out, and it's not my job to interfere. And that, to me, that's a very selfish cop-out.
Yeah, it really is.
Because that might be part of the choice you wanted to make in this life, is that, are you going to be, compassionate enough to help this person?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be, I've suggested this before, like we talk about reality being like a video game, but what if the people playing the video game, like when we play video games, are outside and we only have subtle influences. So we're going, well, let's try and steer me this way. Oh, he's going the wrong way. Okay, let's give him this big paranormal experience, this big blast, and hope that it shifts his direction. He ignored it. Okay, he completely wrote it off. Why is my character such an idiot? Okay, let's try to nudge him this way.
I just had an image of somebody making an intelligence roll with a 20-sided die.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what it is. Our true selves are the ones outside of this world, just kind of nudging us, trying to make us learn the best we can in this life.
Yeah. And that's kind of the daemon theory too, right?
Yeah.
The daemon and the daemon is the player controlling the game. The avatar and the eidolon is the character in the game.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And so sometimes synchronicities are that daemon or that oversoul or whatever, kind of going, look, go this way, come on, follow the synchronicities.
Yeah. Exactly. Or the deja vus are saying, I feel like I've been through this before. Yes, because you have, and you keep dying.
Right. We just keep having to go back to the last restore point. Now, will you get it right this time?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I guess that's one of the arguments, right? Or why we don't remember our past lives. It's like, I'm old enough to remember how I used to spend my Sundays money on some arcade game. Going to arcade game, and I know I have a finite amount of quarters. Well, as long as once I run out of them, then I won't be able to play until the next week or the next month or whatever. So that made the game more intense and more exciting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also more frustrating. And also more frustrating when you ran out of quarters.
Exactly, but then if you have an Xbox, in your back of your mind, you know that you have almost an infinite amount of tries until you get it, and that is somewhat reassuring, but also the game loses some of its excitement.
Right. So here's something I throw out there too. If you keep going back to the last save point or whatever, would we even know that?
Yeah, I don't think we would.
Right.
Yeah, so the stakes would still seem, us in this reality would still seem just as high, but for that outside, whatever we want to call it, it is like, I'm going to go back to where I was 8 hours ago on the save because I went the wrong way and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's assuming you can't be put back on the right path after taking the wrong one,
Yeah, that's true too.
Right. Yeah.
So it might get harder because you went the wrong way, and so whatever's guiding you is going, okay, how do I get back to where I need to be? All right, we're gonna go along this way. Okay, we'll just take the long way around. It'll be harder, but
maybe
I'll learn to listen next time.
Yeah. Have you all ever come across? I've heard it referred to as like quantum immortality, which I think is really super new agey. But there was a scientist at one point that proposed like that you would never actually experience your own death.
Yeah.
You would just keep leaping to other timelines or whatever you want to call it. Probability collapsing, where you experience that you survive everything.
Yeah. And thus you're immortal.
Yeah.
And you're the only one.
And you're the only, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe in the way the probability works is that everyone gets an immortality pill before you actually die, so that you don't actually die. Boy, would that be a mess.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't want to be immortal.
I'd like, I think, some more time as an actual adult. Like you get more time than you realize, but still, like every time, every 10 years down the line, you're thinking, God, I was an idiot 10 years ago.
Yeah.
If only I knew now, then what I know now, man, I could really get somewhere with this. And by the time you're 70, you're going, man, if I knew, back when I was 20, what I know now.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It depends. It's not about the amount of time. It's what you do with it.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you're saying, would like to have more time. Someone on death row probably will not think that.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're in a tropical island on a vacation, obviously, if someone came to you and said, okay, you were going to stay here just 1 week, will you like to stay a month? They will say, hell yeah.
Time is a funny thing. It's also something we don't have really any explanation for.
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Red Pill.
No, the idea is that the finitude of the time is, what makes life sweeter.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And one of the things too is, as human beings, we just have a hard time accepting more than one model of things. And for most people, if you think about time, it's just something that goes forward. But then there's the outside perspective. If you existed outside of time, that you could see everything going forward and backward. But then, you could take that a step further and think of like different timelines and different possibilities playing out and overlapping and merging back together. Time reaching back on itself, like the time loops we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Yeah. I mean, all those things in the reality we live in sound contradictory, but they're not if you have the right ability to perceive it.
Yeah. If you could step out of time, which seems to be what happens to people who have like near-death experiences, then you could look at all of it as one piece, like a video game. All the code is there already written from beginning to end, and so it's not that weird that things could happen retrocausally.
Yeah,
because it's all there, it's all present at once. We're just viewing it sequentially.
Yeah.
That's a sliver of the block universe.
Yeah. I think I mentioned before, like I used to have sort of interesting psychic experiences on my birthday, but they were very like appropriate for being a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or something like that. And inevitably, like my parents would get me a video game, and I would go put the video game in and immediately put in all of the passwords for the different stages. Yeah. I did that like 3 or 4 times.
I don't think you ever mentioned that before.
Oh, well, like a couple of them that I remember was like Spider-Man on the Sega CD. So I'm dating myself here, but I put in every single level code for that game. Didn't miss it. Didn't get one wrong. I just sat there and punched them in. And yeah, and there were things like Pencil 6 and Kidney 2. It wasn't things where you were like Peter Parker was the password, to go to the level.
Right.
No, it was just random words and numbers. Everybody knows I'm a pop culture guy. I got a Flash game, The Flash, like the superhero, for the Game Boy. And I found the screen where you put in the passwords, and I put in like Funhouse 66 or Track 66, and that took you to a level where there were trains, which I didn't even know that was in the game, but I just punched it in. But, you know, talking about now, that makes me think more of the time loop than actually predicting what the passwords were or the codes.
Yeah.
Because at some point, I remember, you know, months later, because we got magazines, of course, back then. We didn't have the internet to go look up passwords that would have like the list of the passwords for Spider-Man. But I even remember at the time when I put them in, I was like, oh, there must be a lot of passwords for this game. That's how come I could just push them, you know, punch them in, you know, with no errors.
Right.
But then you would see it in the magazine and be like, nope, those are the only ones. Okay.
That's really interesting.
It was cool. It was kind of strange. It's one of those things where it was probably a priority for me at that age. But, you know, now I'm like, oh, my psychic experience was I predicted video game passwords.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
doesn't
it's
help me
not as useful as predicting, you know, Wall Street stock.
Or lottery
Wall
numbers.
Street stock, lottery
numbers, yeah.
I would love to accidentally pick up a lottery ticket and guess the lottery numbers.
Right.
Trust me, I've tried that many times.
Right.
I found I was much more accurate if I didn't buy a ticket.
That makes sense.
It just, and what it said to me is I wasn't supposed to win the lottery.
Yeah.
Right.
The, you know, I don't think people who have grown up with the internet realize the frustration of not being able to look up what to do in a game.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, yes.
You'd just be like, I don't know how to do this part. I don't know what to do. And, you know, you'd be talking to people, you know, like, have you gotten past this part?
Yeah.
Oh, there was that one person who, you know, found the secret character in the game that they basically made up.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh yeah, my brother did that. He got the special version of Mario.
Right.
That is like, he could eat 2 mushrooms and he's twice as tall.
So, I really liked the Intellivision growing up. And they had this game called, I think it's like Swords and Sorcery or something like that. And for years, I tried to beat this game. And you couldn't even buy like hint books for that stuff, you know, like that stuff didn't exist.
Right.
And eventually I got to so it's like this maze, Dungeons and Dragons type of thing. And you're in a maze and there's this big dragon in the middle. And I always imagined the end of the game, somehow you'd fight the dragon. And I was always like, what's that going to be like? And so you eventually get this spell that can knock all the walls out. And you can unwall the dragon and then get the treasure that's there, but nothing else happens. And I was always like, what am I doing wrong? So at some point, just a few years ago, I'm like, I should look it up. I bet there's a YouTube video about how to get that game to end, you know? Turns out that's the end of the game. You never fight the dragon. I'm like, wow, that has to be the biggest letdown of any game end ever.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's you have all that build up and enticement.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, here's this huge dragon. When am I going to get to fight the dragon? And it's like, oh, you don't fight the dragon. The dragon's just design. Decoration.
The dragon was a lie.
You just have to you just have to get through the wall, get his treasure, and then apparently the initials of the designers are shown when you grab the treasure, and that's the end of the game.
Huh.
And I'm like, that is so retroactively disappointing.
Yes. That's also. Go ahead.
I was hoping to find a video of someone, you know, who got the dragon to come to life, and instead, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. You know what was interesting? There was a Ninja Turtles game that came out in Nintendo, and there was a certain part in there where there was a jump that looked like it was hard to make, and I could never do it. And, you know, you would hear about people that like, oh, I did that with this, or I did that with that. Well, kind of like your story, Seriah, I was reading something probably 6 months ago, and it turned out that game was broken, and there was no way to make that jump. They had corrected the Japanese release, but if you played the one in the West, that was the game for you because you couldn't progress any further.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. And, you know, games are broken sometimes, just like reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Some more than others. I mean, the last WWE release that came out, the 2K series or whatever, was unplayable when it was released, and they never really completely fixed it before just giving up. And I'm like, how do you release games like this? This isn't right, you know?
Yeah.
They don't care.
No, they don't. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they actually waited 2 years for the new one, and then it was supposed to be out in October, and they said, it's not done. We're going to wait till March. And I went, you know what? I prefer that. I'm still not going to buy your game until I know it works right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, if you take that into a reality thing, like, yeah, sometimes things are just really broken.
It's like the Half-Life games, you know, Half-Life 2, like they took ages to release, but, you know, the fans were loyal enough to wait, and it paid off because it was one of the best games ever. And Half-Life 3 never came out.
Yeah, it's still... do they refuse to talk about it, Valve, now? I can't even remember.
It became almost like an inside joke to say, you know, that the owner of the company, he couldn't even count from 1 to 3. They go, okay, 1, 2, 4. No, what's after 2? 4. 2 plus 1. Yeah.
So
supposedly they're going to release it now. You know, finally.
So 4 came out, but 3 didn't?
No, they released something for the virtual reality goggles.
Like
it was kind of like not a side quest or something, but it was based on Alex, one of the secondary characters, not Gordon Freeman, which is the main character.
Gotcha.
In the game.
Oh, have either of you listened to the Rabbits podcast?
No.
So this is the same people who did Tanis and the Black Tapes.
Okay.
The first season was good. A lot of people feel it's probably the best thing they did. It's like an alternate reality game that sort of intersplices with actual reality.
Okay.
And it was very, very good. The ending, the people who write these, I can't remember his name, but like endings are not their strong point.
Oh.
They have yet to have a really, astounding ending to any of their stuff. They have a good atmosphere and good ideas. Well, they released season 2. Annoyingly, you had to have Stitcher to get it. And so when I went down to Albatwitch a few weeks ago, I said, you know what? I'll get the free trial of Stitcher and listen to Rabbits on the way down because I'm kind of curious how season 2 goes. And I swear to you, they must have watched Hellier.
Interesting.
Because it is very synchronicity heavy. Like it's this girl following all these synchronicities and stuff. And I'm just like, you watched Hellier and went, people like this. Let's weave it into season 2.
Right.
What they did do that's really interesting and would hypothetically work is they didn't create a tarot deck, but they created these things called path cards.
Okay.
And so they had this whole thing like you pick one path card and whatever stands out to you, whatever it makes you think of, that's where it kind of takes you. Okay. So like if you pull it out and you go, oh, this makes me think of this restaurant that I always go to. So then you go to the restaurant and you take out the next path card. And I'm like, this might actually work because that's how these things work, you know? And I think they actually made a deck, like because there's like a little commercial in it, and then I realized the commercials in every episode. I'm like, oh no, this is real. They made cards. Okay.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me a little bit, and this is sort of in reverse process, but the app that people were kind of messing around with like 2 years ago where, yes, that's it. Of course, you're like setting an intention at the beginning of that to see where it takes you. Whereas this is, eliciting it.
Well, they kind of did that with the cards too. Like you're supposed to set your intention and then pull out the first card. But like it's a horror. Well, it's not really horror. It's a thriller podcast. So I mean, it's like acting like there's some other force behind the cards. But I'm going, no, that would actually work. This is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah. Huh.
And like
Yeah,
I said,
would play with those.
they definitely took a lot. They had to have watched Hellier. There's no way they could have like suddenly jumped into the synchronicity game, because that, the public popularity of synchronicity, I think, can be traced back to Hellier.
Totally.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like fictional Hellier, and more interesting than Hellier, honestly. Because it's a story. They can actually go somewhere with it.
I don't get on Twitter, but I get on Reddit fairly often, and I'll scan over the high strangeness and UFO stuff, humanoids, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's some folks on there that seem tuned in, but it's a lot of people that have come by and are having kind of surface level conversations.
Yeah.
But listeners of this show, I think, are quite initiated in the vastness that we might call paranormal or whatever. But to see someone produce a podcast like that, you're like, okay, they had to get into it some.
Yeah.
This isn't just obviously someone who's creative or a team of creative people coming up with a podcast series, but they definitely sounds like they did their research.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And, well, one of the things that the podcast Tanis does is they like to tie it into real life weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
So, like at one point, they used almost every episode they'll start out by talking about something that's actually real, and then it'll interweave into the Tanis story. But like at one point they started, how the feet keep washing up along that one area in Canada.
Yeah.
On the West Coast there. So they used that where they found they had access to one of the feet in the story or whatever, and they tracked it and found out it belonged to such and such a guy. And they went to see the guy, and the guy still had both of his feet, and he's like, "Yeah, that's my shoe, that's my foot,"
Oh, that is freaky.
It's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of a cool twist,
Yeah.
But, so a lot of times they start out, the only one that people got a little upset with, and they brought it back in Rabbits, because all their different stories are in the same universe, is they keep bringing up the Elisa Lam thing. And apparently, they did a whole thing on Tanis on one of the episodes, and the family was really upset that they were using their daughter's death as, fodder for fiction,
Yeah.
Which is understandable, but it's not like that's the only time that's happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that happens all the time. You get a real story and then it gets fictionalized and,
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if you guys have seen the new Batman trailer that came out, I guess, like 2 weeks ago.
No.
But the Riddler is the Zodiac Killer.
Oh.
I mean, they took the Zodiac Killer and basically gave him a slightly different mask, and that's the Riddler in the movie, which, for a down to earth kind of gritty story, you've got somebody that kills people and sends coded messages to the authorities and newspapers and what have you. Those even up very well. And they even took the Zodiac's little circle sort of target symbol and just put a question mark in the middle of it. So, even if you weren't completely aware of the Zodiac Killer, you've probably seen that image some. And so you would get some of the emotional impact of oh, that's freaky, Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. One of the stories I clipped here, news stories, was, when is this from? October 7th. Aztec origin of Elizabethan spirit mirror confirmed. So, new research has confirmed that an obsidian mirror used by John Dee to contact otherworldly spirits and his occult practices has Aztec origins. It had long been suspected that one of John Dee's scryers, an obsidian mirror now in the British Museum, had Aztec origins. However, no records to prove how he obtained it. So I think that's kind of interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, I think the first time that I read about that was in Micah Hanks' book, what's the name? Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule.
Oh.
Was Micah's first book. Yeah, and he mentioned that, the idea that John Dee had been given that scrying mirror not a scrying sphere, like the typical idea of the gypsy woman, looking into the crystal ball, but actually a flat, round mirror had been given it as a gift from someone that, and these had been looted by Hernan Cortés, once he conquered Tenochtitlan, the Aztec Empire, and brought back a whole lot of things to Europe. And to me, that's interesting because, you have the cosmology of the Aztecs, and one of their major deities is Tezcatlipoca, who is sometimes is seen as an evil god. He's not necessarily evil. He's known as the Lord of the Smoky Mirror, or sometimes called Lord of the Obsidian Mirror.
Oh,
right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the idea is that, if you go and like shave in the morning, obviously after you get out of the shower, there's a lot of steam in your bathroom, so your mirror gets all steamy, right? And it's very hard to look your own reflection. Right. And that's kind of like in the worldview of these cultures, that's the thing that they fear the most. The idea of the uncertainty of not managing to look what will happen in the future. So that's one of the reasons why they obsess so much with the idea of counting and calculating the movement on celestial bodies, the planets, the stars, the moon and the sun, and predicting eclipses, because that is one way to try to counter the uncertainty of the smoky mirror.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of us, we feel better when we think we know what's coming.
Oh, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These guys knew that death is an inevitable part of life.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing that scares us all is not that we're going to die, is that we don't know when we're going to die.
Or what happens when we die.
Yeah, I was going to say when and how. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when, how, will it be painful? Will it be quick? Will I just asleep?
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting. These ideas that get put in your head when you're young. I was watching Krull probably when I was like 5. And if you remember that, Liam Neeson's character is a Cyclops, and the Cyclops had traded one of their eyes for wisdom, and all that they were actually given was knowledge of when and where they would die. Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, that doesn't sound so bad, though, because you would go through everything else like, oh, I'm fine. I'm not dying here. You know?
And that's actually something that John L. Tenney was mentioning to his friend of mine. I forget his name, but this is the guy who wrote The Birth Box.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
That show on Netflix.
Yeah.
So John was talking to this guy about this idea he had about, some kind of like a group of mutants. And one of the guys, his mutant power was the idea that he was dying of cancer, and he knew that he will be dead in, like a year. But in the meantime, he will be completely immortal, impervious to bullets, impervious to everything except the thing that will finally kill him, That was an interesting idea. The idea that on the one hand, this guy is totally invulnerable, but at the same time, he's still screwed, because he still knows that his days are totally numbered, no matter what he does.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, all our days are numbered.
Yeah.
We just have no idea what that number is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think all of us are all surprised we're alive at this point anyway.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
I think that's pretty typical for people that are interested in the things we're interested in.
My standard birthday celebration was always to recount how many times I almost died that year.
Yeah.
And it comes from every direction. Sometimes it's just, oh, that was a stupid thing to do, to, oh, that wasn't my fault, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or things you just didn't even know about that just didn't happen. And then you go, oh, that could have, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I think when you're young, you don't really worry about it. You figure, I'll die before I'm 30, whatever. You know, I'm just going to keep going. And then you get to be 30 and you're going, not dead.
Yeah. Like, man, I should have planned for something.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe,
my pension plan was dying before 50.
Right? Yeah.
But that's the thing, because
pay this stuff off if I die before it, you know.
You got to find that balance between being able to enjoy life and not, also be prepared to be around for a while, because you don't know how long you're going to be around. So you don't want to waste it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you got to have some kind of backup plan in case you are here for a while.
Yeah. There was a Chris Rock bit that he used to do about people tell you life is short. And he goes, no, life is long, especially if you make the wrong decisions.
Yes.
Exactly.
I was like, that's pretty prescient.
Scott Levy, who's a wrestler, usually wrestled under the name Raven. Once in an interview, someone said, well, life is short. And he goes, life isn't short. Life is the longest thing we know.
I like that.
I was like,
well, that's profound as hell.
Yeah. Oh, man. Some of those older wrestlers, I swear they were like itinerant preachers or something. The things that they would come out with out of nowhere that were like profound, that had no business coming out of a wrestler doing a promo or an interview,
And some of them are dumb as rocks.
And some of them are dumb as rocks. Yeah. Some of them are exactly what you think they are.
That's dumb as the rock.
Like I don't think any wisdom's coming. I don't think any wisdom's coming out of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, he's just a lesson in what not to do.
Yeah, he was in the right place at the right time with the right look.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get a guy like Scott Levy, and I've listened to his interviews. He's a very smart guy. Had a lot of deep things to talk about, and it was like, cool, all right. But I always love that quote. It's because it's so true. Our concept of time is only what we're here for, and even that is limited by what we remember.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a problem, obviously, of all these people, these rich people who have really not that much concern of what happens to the planet after they pass away, So they might as well burn it all down, Oh, yeah. That's the problem we're in.
Yeah. Because they're not going to be here. I think my dad made that comment at one point. Like, I said something about we should recycle more or something. And he goes, well, what do I care? I won't be here to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's the mindset of a lot of people.
Well, it is. And, speaking to some of these folks that are so just wealthy in a way that it's hard to fathom, it doesn't matter if the world falls apart around them. They've got so much wealth that they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But the rest of us won't be.
That is true.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay, so this was something I clipped from howandwise.com. So I don't really familiar with the site, but it says mystery of alleged 200,000-year-old man-made structure found in Oklahoma in 1969. Archaeologists have explained some of the oldest man-made structures that dated 3,500 to 4,800 BC. Some believe the cairn of Bernanez, a Neolithic monument in France, is one of the oldest man-made structures on Earth, standing for around 7,000 years. Well, Göbekli Tepe is older than that.
Yeah.
There's no exact date when fully conscious human species capable of cognitive skills appeared on Earth, etc., etc. Okay. During the expansion of... it's the mosaic floor. That's what it is. So during the expansion of small towns, it's normal to stumble upon the remains of ancient cultures. On June 27, 1969, workers began the construction along the west side of the Broadway extension north of Northwest 122nd Street, Oklahoma City. They had dug down around 2.75 feet into the hard surface before hitting an unusual rock formation that was believed to have been built by a lost civilization. The formation appeared as a massive mosaic floor comprised of precisely cut stones that had been painstakingly fitted to create a distinct diamond pattern. The smooth stones were also set along a perfect parallel lines pointing east. No clues were found to indicate which culture had built the foundation, although also discovered at the site was what was thought to be a stone hammer left by a prehistoric craftsman. No items were found that could be tested for carbon-14, so its age, just like the builders, is undermined. Or undetermined, I mean. Some speculation that the floor could be 200,000 years old, and the foundation consisted of limestones that usually were found along the shores of the ocean. Durwood Pate, an Oklahoma City geologist who studied the site, told the Daily Oklahoman, whether it was man-made or not, we simply don't know, but considering the vertical cutting and the hammer-like object and the symmetrical design of the diamond-shaped formation, it is improbable that it occurred in nature. Let's see if there was anything more about why they picked that date. Despite this discovery, Oklahoma is a hotbed of bizarre archaeological anomalies. In 1948, Frank Kenwood found an iron pot embedded in coal. The coal came from the same area as the wall in the coal mine. That they also found a silver barrel. The coal that the pot came from is estimated to be over 300 million years old.
Wow.
There's also a wall in Oklahoma that they discovered deep underground that looked like it was built on the surface. They were, I guess, mining or whatever, and they hit it, and it was this obviously man-made wall, and they just kind of reburied it and went in a different direction.
That's probably a good idea, though. Like, well, maybe we don't disturb this.
Yeah.
Well, I think, but you would think scientists would be really interested in it, but the scientists determined it was too low to be too deep in the ground to be man-made.
Man-made, yeah. That's very interesting. I wish we knew where those things were to go back and revisit. And even like the iron pot and the charcoal is interesting because some of the out of place artifacts, limestone will do that concretion thing and whatever and form back around stuff pretty quickly, but you can't fake coal, forming around something. Yeah, it's not really a something that happens naturally in a fast way.
The thing is, maybe there are times where it does that we don't understand.
Yeah,
that's true. But that in my mind, it feels like that has a more credibility if you found something in coal.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So it either means that we're missing a large part of our history, which isn't surprising considering how little we really know about our history. I mean, we just have tiny little slivers here and there, and we've kind of mapped it all out using those little slivers. Or there's something fundamental about how things like coal and oil and stuff like that form, and we've completely misunderstood the process.
Right. Or this is some kind of like, obviously being extremely, speculative, some kind of like weird process that makes objects or even people jump back in time.
Okay, that's also a possibility.
Yeah.
Those are the early time travel experiments where they got the location wrong.
They haven't calibrated the machine.
Yes. That way they could travel through space as well as time so they didn't end up out in the vacuum.
Yeah.
Rick Phil, you've probably seen this. The sort of background chatter around Lou Elizondo, those folks with the idea of, civilizations that have risen and fallen coming back into that sort of conversation a little bit?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that, Elizondo has said so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing that I heard is that he actually saw photographs of UFOs in which you could see actual occupants.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I didn't see that.
So he's also mentioned the idea of maybe these guys are time travelers and things like that, or even strangers. And I think he's also mentioned the idea of maybe it's some kind of like indigenous very advanced culture that has existed hidden on this planet, for thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions of years. But obviously, this is things that people have speculated about, forever. But the fact that this is being said by the Louis Elizondo is, all of a sudden everybody's paying attention.
Right. I feel like it kind of not mainstreamed the idea a bit more, but it certainly got some of the people that were a little bit more surface level interested in this to okay.
Yeah, but why doesn't he mention that thing when he's being interviewed by 60 Minutes?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't know.
We were talking we were talking in the Slack too about more and more you're seeing these scientific articles coming out about electricity and magnetism in space. And none of them look at the work that the Electric Universe did, that Velikovsky did. No, it's like that stuff is just anathema, even though we're confirming it. We're going to do it on our own and pretend you don't exist.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And, you look at those articles too, and they're talking about these, interconnected network of magnetic. It almost sounds like, a literal filament of magnetic strings connecting all of these things, and you're like, yeah, that would be. We've heard things like that.
That would be the Birkeland currents that they postulate exist and have a decent amount of evidence that could be tested to confirm, but mainstream science won't touch it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm always very pessimistic in the Slack, but I'm glad that we're exploring these things, though. I wish they gave the right people credit.
Yeah.
But that, to me, it seems like we ever get the Electric Universe idea in the mainstream and get into it a little bit more, we'll see some very interesting changes in the world and how we travel and power things and everything else.
I also wonder if there is any kind of breakaway civilization of any kind that are they using this tech? Are they using the stuff Tesla understood? Are they using the Electric Universe stuff? And that's why, and they would then have a vested interest in keeping it away from the rest of the world.
I've thought about that because, if say that, some of the UFOs we've seen out there are literally nuts and bolts UFOs with occupants. Well, maybe it's easy for them to get here because they understand the Electric Universe theory.
Right.
And they could use those physics to travel here. And it's actually not something that's that sophisticated. It's just that we haven't explored that and we're kind of kept in this box. And so, maybe they're not that far advanced from us. And this is assuming that this are nuts and bolts thing, which I'm not really into. But I don't know. Mac Toney's with the Crypto-Terrestrial book that if listeners have never read that, go check it out. It's a very short book too. You'll digest it quickly, but it makes the breakaway civilization idea sound a little bit more plausible than it might at first glance.
I don't know. There is some plausibility to it, even if it's not a complete breakaway, but like a secondary civilization underneath our own, in a sense. These corporations and the military-industrial complex are almost like their own sort of civilization at this point.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. That makes perfect sense. And if they have access to different technologies and you've kind of created your own sets of rules for people that live within that world, community or whatever, I mean, you basically have a separate culture that people just don't see.
It's intertwined with ours, but it's also invisible to the main group of people out. The majority of people on the planet.
And that always makes me think of Delachow. Is it Delachow? I always get the name of
Delachow.
Delachow, yeah.
Or Delachow? Okay.
Delachow, yeah.
Because that's kind of what that was, right?
Yes.
Also, the listeners aren't familiar with that. It's
Walter Bosley.
Yeah, airships in California. Is that correct?
Yes, in the early to mid 1800s.
Yeah,
There's
the Sonoma Aero Club.
Yeah, there's
Sure,
evidence that they may have had airships, which may partially explain the airship wave. But that they continued having this advanced technology that they were a few decades ahead of the rest of the world.
There's one, I can't remember where I read this, but it was about Delachau, and they were talking about they needed water as part of what they used to make the airships, anti-gravity. I don't know the word.
Right.
And that always made me think about the black triangles in Germany, some of the sightings where they would see the tube coming out to a lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was draining water out of a lake or a pond. Of course, I also thought that maybe it was just to cool some type of nuclear reactor inside of those things too. So, but it's an interesting connection through there.
Huh. I mean, obviously the airships often stopped and asked people for water, but then again, so do UFOs,
Yeah, and they make you some pancakes sometimes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but at the same time, okay, if they need water, but they also want to keep it a secret. So why don't they go to the most remote lake?
Yeah.
in the United States. Oh no, they have to go to the well next to Mr. Rogers' farm.
Yeah. It's like 100 yards from his back door, and he's like, "Oh I can see that out there. There's a lot of lights. What's going on?"
Yeah. Oh darn it, you found us.
Yeah.
That's because it's a performance. It's theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the things that we come back to, the idea that is some kind of theatricality. That's staging in which they act as if they were cut with their pants down.
Yeah.
Taking samples and stuff.
And that's one of those similarities you get with like any kind of spectral, not alien, but like paranormal encounters. Is often the creatures seem like they're surprised you can see them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can see me.
Yeah.
And the aliens are like, oh, you caught us taking this plant sample.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just out here with this test tube, putting some dirt in this. I didn't know you'd find me.
That's why.
Go ahead.
That's why it always feels so preset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a quote somewhere, and I'm sorry, I'm just throwing this out here, not knowing which book it was in, but somebody saw like Space Brothers in their front yard and went out to visit with them, and the conversation as they were out there turned into something of like, well, why don't you tell everybody or that you're here? Why don't we see you more places? And he goes, well, we want you to believe in us,
but not too much.
But only a little bit. Yeah, but not too much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forget what encounter that is. That's either Mike. I think that's one of Mike Clelland's favorite lines.
Yes.
Either him or Aaron Gullius.
Herbert Schirmer.
What was that?
I think he was Schirmer, a patrolman from Nebraska.
Yes. It was a cop, wasn't it?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's exactly that's so dead on for how the phenomena behaves. All of it, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't want us to be able to prove it exists.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so that kind of, I had this thought when we were talking about synchronicity earlier with the podcast, that spontaneous synchronicity can be good things. It can foretell something positive, or maybe you can consider it an omen of something, whatever. Sometimes synchronicities just happen, but if you go searching for synchronicity after synchronicity and you find them, you're going to make yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Because the phenomenon is like, oh yeah, I got you on the line now.
Well, the way I've been describing it is like we're in this web, and like when you tap that web of the paranormal, it draws more of these things to you in every way, including synchronicities. So after a while, you're just drawing the same synchronicities to you. It doesn't actually mean anything anymore. You're just making noise on the web.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I've been sometimes think about like the idea that every energy source that we know of leaves some kind of like byproduct, as a result. You burn a match, you end up with the ash.
Right.
You power a nuclear plant, you end up with radioactive waste. So thinking about, well, what would be the byproduct of an actual alien engine? What if the byproduct of an alien machine is like an excess of synchronicity, almost like if it was some kind of like a psychic solution?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I say that makes sense. But if you're playing with reality, and
right,
and I assume you're also messing with probability and things like that. I mean, that is interesting.
Yeah, and this is something that also Mike Leland discussed in his defunct Hidden Experience podcast. He had a friend of his, Lucretia Hart was her pen name. And this is a woman that had a history of incredibly weird experiences. You name it, near death, encountered with gray-like entities, and also with the tall blondes. And she also came up with that idea that the tall blondes, being obviously the nice aliens, they were the guys who parked their UFO like not near her home, but kind of like some distance away. Because if they actually came closer, they will kind of like disrupt the ether around her, their house, causing a lot of like poltergeist activity. And this thing now with the latest book released by George Knapp, Come Kelleher, and this guy, I think his name is John or something like Gatsky. The thing about the skinwalkers in the Pentagon, and this idea that one of the things as a result of visiting the skinwalker ranches, you get what they call the hitchhiker effect,
right?
Which is like this phenomenon, like clings to you and starts to mess you up at your private home, and you get, an increase of like a wild, unchecked psychic activity. And I found that to be really, really interesting. I guess that's one of the things when I thought, well, okay, well, maybe, psychic activity is some kind of like the non-material pollution of a truly alien technology.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. Plus, you're also tapping on that web when you're at the Skinwalker Ranch. So now they know where you are.
Right.
Although anything at this point that comes out of Knapp and that whole group there, I take with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
I understand perfectly, but at the same time, some people think, no, this is completely disinformation or whatever. I'm not sure about that, because
no, I don't think so.
If it was only disinformation, I feel they would have chosen a more digestible story.
Not only that, but even disinfo usually comes with actual info.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's true.
So, I mean, I think Knapp is honest. I just question his judgment on some of this stuff at this point.
Yeah. And also his allegiance to, people like Robert Bigelow. I mean, I'm sure that George thinks very highly of Robert Bigelow, but maybe, that's just the result of they being so close.
Yeah.
For so many years, like you start, you kind of lose objectivity, and you start, actually judging fairly the actions of these people.
All right, that seems like a good place to end things. Red Pill, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at the Daily Grail, www.dailygrail.com, which is one of the best websites dealing with the fringe paranormal topics and also the cutting edge science. I also have my own personal website, absurdbydesign.com. They can check out my artworks, links to podcast interviews such as these. And also, I want to announce that we, by we I mean a group of friends and I, are going to finally reveal our super duper secret project this Sunday on Halloween.
Yeah,
so
this will probably be out after that.
No, okay. So if this is after that, then you know already what our super duper project is, which is our ufology tarot deck Kickstarter campaign, and we are asking for you guys to back us up so we can reach our goal, and I can actually manage to devote myself like a medieval monk into creating this artwork for you guys.
And
go ahead, Seriah.
Oh, I was going to say, we should have a show dedicated to that by the time you hear this.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
And Red Pill has shared a little of the art with us too, and it is awesome.
It is phenomenal.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
So Super Inframan. We have a YouTube listener who keeps asking, who is Super Inframan?
Who is Super Inframan? Like as the character, huh?
No, I guess it's as who you are.
Yeah. Oh, I think I'm just Super Inframan.
All right. Works for me. This show would not be possible without the help of our Patreons. And a special thanks to those of you pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, The 100th Monkey Project, a blue second generation MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Gayaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Cisternos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, David Moore, Denise Sarek, Diane B., Diona Bidwell, Dominic O'Malley, Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, Joanna Rojas, John W. Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Kristen L., Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Sedgder, Stone Wilderness, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler H. Glimstead, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Martina Saint, and Stephen D. Thank you all so very, very much. Not surprisingly, this conversation continues for quite a bit on a Patreon segment. If you're not a Patreon, it's only $3 a month. You get extra stuff pretty much every week, as well as each show a week in advance. So go to wheretheroadgo.com to sign up for that, and I think you'll find that it's well worth your $3. We also have merch available on the page, and of course, if you could spread the word, that always helps as well. And give us good ratings on wherever you're listening to this, on the many podcatching services, etc., because that also helps quite a lot. I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.